This is becoming a regular occurrence, and this is a great thing and a big feather in Dan Lanning's cap because through two different offensive line coaches now, Oregon has been nominated as a semifinalist for the Joe Moore Award given to the best offensive line in all of college football for a third straight year. There is absolutely a part of this that is sort of de facto with Oregon's national success in each of Dan Lanning's 3 seasons. First year, lose to Georgia, but then start to win a lot of football games and win big and stack up the victories over the course of the season. That gets a lot of attention. Last year, in the top 10 the entire year. This year, taking that to an even new height as the number one team in the country right now in the APN and the college football playoff rankings. So but I don't want that to come off as, well, the offensive line, or Spencer, you're dogging on the offensive line. No, not at all. If I were to say that would I say that Oregon has the best offensive line in all of college football? I would not say that. I would not say that. Do they deserve to be in this spot? Yes, absolutely. There are not a lot of offensive lines in all of college football that can allow 0 sacks to Michigan and Ohio State. And I have discussed before, and will reiterate because it is important to note, that Dylan Gabriel is indeed responsible for that as well, but it starts with the guys up front. You got to win 1v1 matchups. You got to pass off protections well. You got to get into the right sequence, and that comes back to the quarterback too. But the other finalists are Alabama. It's just weird to hear semifinalists when it's not, 4 teams, but that's, there are 128, 132, I think, FBS Division I college football teams. So the other finalists are Alabama, Army. That's awesome. That's just awesome. Indiana, very good. I love that Indiana's on there. Iowa, Notre Dame, Ohio State, Tennessee, Texas, and Tulane. And I'm here for the G5 inclusion for those particular teams. I don't know if they'll end up winning it and such. I wouldn't expect Oregon's offensive line to win this award at the end of the year. I think the rushing numbers are why, but the sack numbers, once again, are just so good. And Alik Terry, of course, deserves a lot of credit because this is an offensive line that was working in a new center at the start of the year. They didn't even know who that center was going to be after Matthew Bedford got hurt. And through the first 2 weeks, remember, the people voting on this award are well aware of what happened against Boise State and Idaho. And those were, by any measure, bad performances. Oregon was barely over 100 yards rushing and allowed 7 sacks in those 2 games. Offensive line, straight up bad. Straight up bad. And for them to be in this spot is reflective of how much they have grown and improved. And that's a credit to Alik Terry. And when Adrian Clem left Oregon after the 22 season for the NFL, I'll be honest, I was a little worried. Was it 22, 23? I don't know. Everything all blends together and whatnot. But I was worried because I thought Adrian Clem was really good. He recruited at a high level. The production was so good. He took a veteran offensive line and made them even better than they were in the 2021 season when they were mostly pretty good. And I was just really impressed. And so they hire Alik Terry, young up-and-coming guy. Guy's a stud. I mean, he should probably get a raise this offseason. He should probably get a raise. Anytime you have a finalist for the best unit in the country or a player who's a finalist for the best at his position, if, Tez Johnson were to be a finalist for the Biletnikoff, given the best wide receiver in college football, yeah, you'd probably look at Junior Adams and say, he should probably get a raise. Should probably get a raise. Make sure he sticks around in Eugene. Same thing for any running backs coach, which is, of course, Rashad Samples now, if Jordan James were to be a finalist for the Doak Walker. Like, that comes back to the position coach. Yes, head coach deserves credit too, but ultimately you want to go to the position coach there. And I think Alik Terry just deserves a huge, huge shout out. I mean, all the reshuffling that he's had to do and the complaints that Oregon fans have rightfully had at times this year about the offensive line play, and yet they're still in this position. That's setting a really, really high standard, and I think Terry deserves a lot of credit for that. So I don't know that Oregon will come out and win. I don't think Ohio State would win. Tennessee, I don't know about Tennessee. I think Indiana has got a real case to progress along those lines and win the award for the best offensive line in college football. When you watch them play, their offensive line is really good. And they also played well against Michigan. The offensive line did specifically. The team as a whole was just okay, and we know that Michigan front is really nasty. But Headlined by Josh Connerly and Johnny Cornelius at tackle, and Poncho, I think, has done a good job at center this year, and the shifting they've done with the guard positions, it's a tough thing to manage, and Malik Terry has just done one heck of a coaching job, and this is why recruiting matters. This is why depth matters. Sometimes you'll hear a remark out there about, well, it's just all about transfers. You just go you just do this or whatnot. Left or right along the offensive line. That is a high school recruit, one-time transfer, but second-year player. High school recruit when Marcus Harper is healthy in there, and a transfer. Transfer portal supplements things. The core, the depth, guys like Davey Uli or Kavika Rogers, both high school guys that Oregon recruited. Got to have that depth, especially along the O-line. So I love seeing him get that sort of recognition. All right, I want to get into this. Later I'll talk about running backs and then the basketball fiasco from last night. Oh, man, that was fun. That was really, really fun. Only because Oregon won, of course, and then Dana Altman delivered a dynamite Dana quote. But 3 guys who I think need to play better for Oregon to get a big win. And my everydayers out there have heard this throughout the course of the season, that when I go over keys to the game, as I will on tomorrow's show, it's generally in the context of in order for Oregon to get a big win. That's how I look at this Wisconsin game as well. If Oregon goes out and does a handful of things better than they did against Maryland, yeah, they're going to win the game by more than 2 touchdowns. They could win it by 3. They could win it by 4. Iowa, who's average, not bad, but not great. They're an average team in the Big Ten. Housed Wisconsin. No reason Oregon can't do that. Also no reason Wisconsin can't push Oregon for 4 quarters if they play the way they did against Maryland, because this is a better team than that. But 3 guys I wanted to look at and say, was not overly impressed at times or with certain sequences of how they played against Maryland. And if they improve their performance, I think Oregon is going to be much better off. Certainly, everyone can always play better. Coach will tell you that. But these are the guys who stood out the most to me. First, Dylan Gabriel was not sharp in the early going. I know T-Ferg had a drop, and Terrence Ferguson is on this list as well. I know he had the touchdown, and he had a 3rd down conversion earlier on that touchdown drive. But T-Ferg had a drop, but then there was another time they tried to link up, and Gabriel was throwing Josh Allen-style fastballs over the middle, and you're like, whoa, I know you can rev it up to 96 there, DG, but every now and then you got to throw it at 89. And I'm just using baseball comparisons here. That's not actually how hard. I don't know how hard guys actually throw a football, but it's not as hard as you throw a baseball, obviously. So I think Dylan Gabriel, as much as anyone, has to be sharper in the early going. Remember, the offense kind of stumbled in the early portion of that Maryland game, and they just kind of looked out of sync. And at some level, that's got to come back to the quarterback. And then there were some reads that I felt Gabriel missed, and particularly on 2nd and goal when he forced the shovel pass to Terrence Ferguson. Wrong play. Wrong read. I think he predetermined that one. And look, we're nitpicking here. This guy is a Heisman Trophy contender. He deserves to be that as the quarterback of the number 1 team in the country, and the numbers that he has put up this season. Just about every criticism you could lob at Dylan Gabriel or any Oregon player, it's nitpicking. Because Oregon's 10-0, and they've won every game in Big Ten play by at least 20 points. So, except for Ohio State. So, it is 100% nitpicking here, but I didn't think Dylan Gabriel played his best game. Can they be better on 3rd down? Can they be better in the early going? I think that comes back to Dylan Gabriel. And then Terrence Ferguson. Got to catch the ball. He's still just a road paver in the run game and does just a phenomenal job in that sense. I didn't have a problem with that, but yeah, the drop early on kind of just contributed to the stumbles. And especially with those veteran leaders on this team, they got to be able to step up better. And then Tysheem Johnson, couple of penalties in that game. Got to get rid of them. So Dan Lanning, I was asked by James Crepea, the Oregonian, about what they're doing to address the penalties. Apparently the defensive backs were playing this week with boxing gloves so that they can't grab onto a guy. Phenomenal. Hope that works out. I've gotten questions before about, well, how do you actually work on penalties? Well, apparently that's how you work on penalties. Apparently you put boxing gloves on and say, yeah, can't grab a guy now. Use your technique, anticipate, read body language, everything else except grabbing the guy. Hopefully that works out. But Tysheem definitely didn't have a good day in coverage. He cleans that up. The Oregon defense will be in a much better spot.